Well, good morning, everyone. You're listening to Turtle Island News with Tracey Kennedy. Today is Thursday. Well, the 6th already. Can't even believe it's February. I can't even believe it's 2014. Now, if you've had a chance to look, and I'm not sure if I told you last time, The Matrix Part 9, so last one, and 10 is already up. I don't know if we'll get through all of 10 today. If not, we'll finish that up next week. Now, we were talking about how many of the seals in many religions are exactly the same, word for word, sign for sign, and we left off at reason 133. I realize I go through a lot of things over and over again, but I'm trying to take us deeper on that. And again, the pictures will always be on turtleislandnews.info, and Revolution Radio Freedom Slips always has archives as well. Now, top left is the official seal of the Dominion of the Order of Melchizedek, the High Priesthood. This links Christianity, Judaism, and Islam close together. The jewel of the 33rd Order out of Chaos is also there. I still find it amazing that although a few people have already made it known, the 33rd degree is made to look like the highest when it is not. We've been told that there are 360, actually, which would make sense full circle, in which only one can hold the title of each, I guess. There is another thing to think about. If everything is based on sound, and every combination of these sounds can be found on a piano scale, there are then 12 octaves on the scale and a 13th overtone. If we are at 3, which is C, and if you were listening last week or had a chance to look at it, I also showed how the Twin Towers were basically showing us C again. So we are at C, and we are two scales away from the lowest dimension right now. When you hear the low keys on a piano, you can feel the vibration of danger those keys emit. They physically change you. As we were talking about on Tuesday, sound and intent has a lot to do with what we feel before we even know it. We know a lie, whether we consciously admit it or not. And these things, of course, can be trained if we were not so blinded by technology right now that is being focused against us. We'd all know these things easily. So instead of teaching our children these things that could actually help them in life, we teach them how to regurgitate stuff in books. That's worked out really well for us. So it is time to wake up and really understand where we are in this whole thing, rather than just imagining everything will work out. We must begin to engage life the proper way, or face the results of such negligence as things run amok in front of us. Continuing on the trail, we find that the Arabs contained detailed information in regards to the involvement of invaders and us. They have accounts that have survived for ages of ships they called Shams, interesting name, visiting Earth. It is safe to say that the Arabs had already familiarized themselves with these beings, even sometimes worshipped them. I find an uncanny similarity in the name of Allahu, the first Anunnaki, to find the earth before his brother Anu, and the Muslim god Allah. The story of Allahu's discovery of the earth is part of the Sumerian tablets, which seldom get mentioned amongst all the scholars, because Anu becomes chief god of the tablets later, and And that was what Sitchin and his league of Thulian and Luciferians wanted us to focus on. They immediately go into the story of Anu as a ruler, Enlil, Ea, Marduk, Inanna, Nergzag, Gilgamesh, etc. One of the stories, the first stories they wrote, and of course not mentioned by Sitchin, is Gilgamesh, and it's quite a erotic tale. As a matter of fact, it looks like the first thing that we wrote when we could write was pornography. It was quite a steamy scene. Anyway, this also lets us know these beings are not referred to as Anunnaki amongst themselves. And again, that word just means heaven and earth and ki combining. It could have many other meanings, and it says nothing about falling. It does not say from the skies fell, these things. They said a joining of the two. So I'm not against them being alien or from elsewhere. I'm just saying it speaks nothing of falling, and the whole falling tale is completely overrated because it's hard to find anywhere, as a matter of fact. Now, amongst themselves, it is clear Anu, the brother of Allahu, earned the right because of his victory over his brother in battle to name their lineage on earth Anunnaki. That's where it came from. And it did speak of a battle. Sumerian tablets that precedes the one in the common publications and the ones that are being pushed and stressed states that Allahu made the journey from the home planet of the Anunnaki first in order to find a planet that contained resources to save their world. Now, Sitchin and many others say it's gold, but there is no mention of mining in the actual tablets. None. Other than just regular gold for bracelets and things. There is nothing else. There is nothing about another world other than in the original ones. And most of those aren't even Sumerian. They're later. But anyway, he was considered the bravest for accomplishing an almost impossible task. After a lengthy travel through the solar system, Tiamat was discovered. It's supposed to be our planet, and Allahu set a course to enter the atmosphere, which ended up in crash landing in the ocean. With atmosphere suits, he came upon a land, not knowing if the air was yet breathable. Once gold was found, Allahu sent communication back to the home planet of his find. Now, when I think of this, and all of the ancient stories that we've talked about from all over the world, I think of the movie Predator. That comes to mind, because apparently the second to arrive was Anu, Allahu's brother, who challenges him immediately for the new territory by a wrestling match. It says Allahu lost the match and was exiled along with his trusty companion. Later, it says that Allahu challenged Anu again and lost a second time. Said that Allahu was so angry about this that he bit off his brother's penis. That's, I'm sorry, I'm not making this stuff up. That's what it says. For this, the council of the gods banished Allahu to Mars, a world that was only inhabitable underground, basically. The face on Mars is said to be the face of Allahu, a shrine to him who found Tiamat first and saved their whole planet. The amazing story of Osiris and his brother Set are pretty similar to this, missing penis and all. Now, could the Muslims be worshipping Allahu as the one and only God because he was the first of the gods to come to earth? Getting back to the gold, we find that all gold of the world has now been transported to the UAE in Dubai, the strongest financial superstructure in the world right now, bar none. For those who can truly appreciate architecture and sacred geometry, they will find the structures of Dubai spellbinding. We'll have to do a whole story on that one. So a brand new version of the Tower of Babel has been constructed, boasting itself as the tallest building in the world, shaped as a modern ziggurat. The gates of Ishtar have been reconstructed to be in at least 3 times their original proportion. You find 8-sided pyramids rather than the old 4-sided pyramids, which makes it clear that everything is evolving. They now have crossed into the 16. As I said before, when the gods return, their spirit often takes up inhabitants in the temples man constructs for them. It's pretty clear after a while that those who were pharaohs allowed their bodies to become vessels for the gods. So thus the deity spoke through them. It makes sense that no common man will become ruler in this world. He would have to be close in association with the powers and the dominions that be. The world sits and watches powerless as the elite in the UN play like they cannot stop Israel from bombing Gaza and Hamas back into the Stone Age. Why is it that they really don't want to hold back Israel, even after they bombed a UN convoy? It is simple as the name is. Ra-El. Is, of course, stands for Isis, and of course her consort Ra, Lord of the Underworld, Land of the Dar, and El, who is Saturn, the Lord of the Rings. The Star of David carries a hexagram in its center. Words like elect, elite, elevated, Elohim, Elysium, and many more are all Saturnian words. Just as Earth is alive, as people often forget, other planets are alive also and can be contacted through frequency, shapes, colors, tied into a perfect system here. Pythagoras, the old Python from Samos, taught this in his schools. The elite have converted and covered this information, and have used it to rule the people, thus barring the way to ascension, while not getting through themselves. What joy will come when they shall prevail no longer? Even modern, and I hate to use this word because it just sounds a little fluffy bunny, the New Age movement actually hijacked something that was beautiful before. And this again was in a time where a lot of these things, like the myth of Lemuria, these kind of things came up. Scientists, Tesla, and several mystic leaders at the time, because he was working with some Buddhists, believe it or not, had discovered there was something called the Akashic Field. This name may be familiar to you. There is an Akashic Field. The Akashic Records was something that, a little bit of truth and a little bit of fakeness, and we can actually tap into it. It's called the law of everything that they've been looking for. This is the Akashic Field, and it's something that's real and we could actually use. And they change it to the Akashic Records, and it's supposed to be some sort of higher power. It's not a higher power. It is all of us. But it is the knowledge of everything, which we could be tapping into. Now, if you are taking a look at this, we go to Reason 134. Saturn has a hexagonal north. Sometimes the South Pole looks like that. NASA pretends to be baffled by this phenomenon. This is also why the Seal of Solomon, also called the Star of David, is a hexagon star, because it evokes the spirit from the sphere of Saturn. Other planets also have geometric correspondence that serve for evocation purposes, to call it. The South Pole many times looks like an eye, the great eye of Sauron. Someone must have known this. Now, a branch of Hycosus shepherd kings left Egypt under Thutmose III, aka Moses, to take over the land of Canaan, which became Palestine, then Israel. This is told in the tales of Egyptology as a story of Ra deciding to depart from Egypt. This was the time that the cult of Ra left Egypt and spread through most of the world. Even the other day, I overheard a Bob Marley song with him saying in the beginning, "If a man does not serve Ras, he will never see no peace." What kind of talk is this? The takeover was initiated. Much blood was wrought up to the bridle throughout the world. Once they gained a foothold, it gave birth to Zionism. All these bloodlines all connect by way of Babylon, Sumeria, Egypt, Chaldea, Syria, even Nubia, especially Nubia, Ethiopia, and together the bloodline of the snake began to expand and divvy up the world, its resources, and the humans remained completely unsuspecting for a time. When bad things happen in this world, people begin to pray. This gives the deities more energy to make more bad things happen, so people can pray more. Again, vicious cycle here. All main religions use these beings as their backbone, seldom teach self-empowerment through the manipulation of their own body's energy. They say, true, you can reach higher states, but not without the aid of so-and-so or such and such, or this guy or that guy, or this woman or that woman. There are two separate doctrines, one for them and one for you. Generally, if a spirit is alive, it will manifest. That is the doctrine of the elite. The people are taught to remain in blind faith, never seeing the God, only maintaining a one-sided dialogue with the crucified Lord. All real prophets, yogis, brahmas maintained vivid contact with the spiritual world. The doctrine of the elite gives them the power which is instilled by communicating with these beings. The belief system for the commoner leaves them powerless, utterly helpless, leaves them as prey. As they say more prayers go up, the more blessings come down. But be blessed. These are the words that have been analyzed by individual believers. If they expect to discover why they are still waiting on something that should have already come. So the truth behind Israel is they are evoking the assistance of entities they discovered while playing with written Kabbalah, along with some creepy residue from ancient Egypt all the way back to the groves of Ur. Though thousands of people from different countries are protesting Gaza situation and many others, they find their governments doing absolutely nothing, because in secrecy they are all working on a plan that has now the name New World Order, or simply OWN, aka Zionism. When people were watching that horrific satanic show, dance show with the stars, America was bombing the Congo back into dust. And, as the world attacks for more riches, and another pipeline blows up. These things are going on, and on is actually a correct pronunciation of the word we know as On. On was Ones, the main deity worshipped in Babylon and Heliopolis. The On has embedded itself so deep in our words, we find when we need to turn a light, we must turn it on, thus creating a false light. All units of energy contain the word on in it, because on is a type of power for the elite. For example, neutron, proton, electron, tachyon, orgon, moron. Doesn't surprise me that's in there, and that's just to name a few. On is a deity. The real mind control is people are not dealing with their spiritual condition. They are holding on to spiritual beliefs that they in fact live contrary to every single day. Many spiritual beliefs contradict each other, all in the same book, since the subconscious mind has picked this up by more of intuition. It is generally not dedicated to religion at all, where this conscious mind, which becomes diseased by the ego, is. Thus, it will play church just to say that it is better than most and will be saved. I mean saved by the God when He returns. Now moving down. Reason 135. Contrary to what most people believe, Jewish holy men do not support Zionism. They recognize it is an infestation and a plague, rotting away the morals and the culture of the 12 tribes. However, they are not part of the Israeli political party, so their words mean nothing, and they won't go there, because they're, of course, waiting for God to come and tell them. In Genesis chapter 3, it says that the sons of God, plural, saw the daughters of women. Since it clearly indicated that there were more than one Son of God, why does the New Testament insist all of a sudden there was only one Son? Not to mention in the book of Hebrews, located in the New Testament, it even says that Jesus was of the order of Melchizedek, the priest of Ha-Elon, also indicating that he was an initiate and not even the most powerful of his order. The Melchizedeks led directly to Sirius, basically. Melchizedeks have been involved in deeper esoteric course of our future. Those who have come into the spotlight representing the Melchizedeks have always been on a higher spiritual level, bringing portents of impending visitation by Syrians from the sky and Anunnaki, perhaps hybrids from the sky. The two men of our time, openly representing the Melchizedeks, are Trunvalo Melchizedeks, because that's his freaking name, and Dr. Malachi Z. York. The former is still conducting deep initiations in Peru. Last time I checked, although he did say the world was coming to an end and by his DVD or something. The latter is jailed in Denver, Colorado, Supermax, for 140 years for several counts of child molestation, which I know for a fact he committed. It took the FBI 30 years to find that out. But they can catch a bootlegger in a friggin' minute. Anyway, it is clear the extraterrestrial card is about to be played. Last year, as I was telling you, was the highest amount of UFO sightings in the sky. And they've been leading up to it, at least since 2010. I think you'll agree with me on that. And there are several documents about future staged invasions by the beings that have already been here and that are not humanoid. Basically, it seems the unseen hand wants to step a little from the shadows for the next phase of their plan. The arrivals will serve to unite the world under one common enemy, the aliens. This will bring about various systems that will ensure everyone remains safe, traceable, and immune to foreign viruses through vaccine. Again, just recently, the swine flu scare made millions go and get injected. So even if you didn't get injected, they're carriers. And of course, that is a foreign virus, and whatever else is hidden in the vaccines. One should be very careful for these kinds of scares that they force you to go get vaccinated because of fear of catching a disease. In vaccination, there are mind, DNA, health-altering drugs that have various effects as we continue into this new age. Reason 136, the Melchizedeks, are similar to the Levite priests, put over taking care of personal needs of the unseen one. When they manifest into flesh, they are always carrying out a main agenda, and their information tends to be several cuts above the rest. John Vallo stated that we should expect the Syrians to begin arriving. I think he was saying at first 2010. Malachi York was one of the first men to bring about information of Naribu, which is false, so you know who he works for. Dr. York introduced the religion Nawapu to the world, thus bringing light to the whole Sumerian Anu stuff, a great misguidance to African Americans. Of course, when one takes a look at the Bible in the Old Testament, you are immediately confronted with a God who demands large sacrifices of animals. Still, many fail to make the connection that an animal sacrifice is black magic. How could it be anything else? Those closely involved with the inner order tend to have dark characteristics because they must participate in this senseless sacrifice of cruelty. I noticed, even in Islamic faith, an animal must be sacrificed during weddings, holidays, various occasions. So why do we continue such barbaric practices? The ancient law even says if it can run from you, you don't need it. Look upon it. Can feel pain. Now you see yourself and taste death. That's what it says. The Creator made many things for man and woman to marvel and cherish, so their characters may be pleasing and entertaining to you. Now would be time to get to the roots of where much of the power of Zionism movement lies. That becomes as easy as looking at the name Solomon to see how all this connects. When the works of Solomon were introduced, it involved the evoking of demons. The more popular book is the Keys to Solomon, removed from his sepulchre. Solomon himself proclaims in the Bible that he built the temple with the assistance of demons, in which he subdued and put under the control with a ring that was given to him by the God of the Bible. Sol, S-O-L, is Latin for sun. Om, or Om, is Sanskrit for an alternative sun, just O-M. On, Sumerian, Babylonian for Ones. Many adepts learned that the name is a sign of collaboration between three different brotherhoods that decided to combine forces and knowledge to achieve complete dominance over the world. Solomon brought it all together Solomon not only wandered after Asheroth, but also sacrificed once a year to Bel. Jewish works further claim that Solomon was debunked, basically rebuked, for doing these things, but was absolved nonetheless. While Solomon was ruler, kings and wise men came from all over just to hear his words, see his accomplishments. Thus many were introduced and induced into a deeper version of mysticism that involved commanding the lower jinn. When one thinks of the solar deities are the evil ones, and that the moon deities perhaps are the nice ones, these are not still. You're not getting the whole picture here. All of these energies seek to master what will serve them, oftentimes by fooling the worshipper into actually believing they are in control. As I told someone very wise, demons are strong enough to hurl people far. They're not your companions. They're not your friends. You cannot trust them. They are jealous and seek respite until the day. If you but knew, Iblis, Satan, said he was made of smokeless fire, stronger than flesh, thus he would not be a friend to man, failing to realize we are created in the image of the Most High. Showed he lacked reason, was deluded by pride, so we stripped him of his jewels and his beauty and placed him in darkness. This is from the Quran. Indeed, we were made aware that when trying to duplicate the power of our Most High, the impostor, Nakash, pointed to all the people who found themselves not sure of their origin, to the direction of a dying son who is Shemish, called Samuel. Yes, it was that dismal light which proclaims itself as sustainer of the earth, and rises each morning in full 90 degrees. This faint hue, the uncounted, perceived as the splendid one, incessantly wanting to make their God visible, and not seeking sensibility and reason. Even great Egypt was caught worshipping only what they perceived in clear view. Impatient they were, and they utterly failed, trapped in the world of no returns, thus they beckon others to join them in misery. They are still known by wise and chaste to be misguided death dealers, residing even now by ritual and pact in all the lowest places of the world. Their abode is nothingness. They are leechers of life, and they feast on those who can be misled into the wants of only this material matter. Just as always, the female role is kept secret. It is actually Sheba, who is Balkis, who taught Solomon the wisdom of the stars. Saba actually means star, or seven. Thus, the 7 stars are the Pleiades, as we talked about before. The Quran tells a people called the Sheabans, who could make good converts. I found that Shaba was more of an energy like Sothis, not an actual woman. Sheba was a temple in Ethiopian, perhaps not a physical queen. The physical queen of the time was Makta, yeah, it sounds like Magdalene, who had as her consort a eunuch, basically, Candace, who commanded elephants. The elephant was a deity, sacred, of course, in Ethiopia. They had many temples to commemorate the elephant, although all the books say that the meaning of these temples have been lost. The ancient elephant was called Mastodon, and this is where our word master comes from. This is like the woolly mammoth looking elephant kind of thing. Even hearing the name Makeda, and you may not understand it this way, but Makeda was mentioned from Oprah in The Color Purple. In the movie, they go back to Africa where they're singing this song, Ain't no ocean, ain't no seas, Maki Dada, can keep my sister away from me, Maki Dada. Remember it now? This was sung while a bloodletting ritual was happening and a scarring was taking place in Africa. There is nothing new under the sun. Now that the information portals are opening, it is much easier to connect the dots and see that we have been lied to so profusely since day one. This should be enough for one to realize they cannot trust what others say and must investigate it for themselves. Everything I bring forth, I can prove, even at times down to the quantum level. Those who are at the head of many religious circles are pushing propaganda that they cannot validate the origin of thus. Everyone is told to have blind faith. Why should faith be blind? If my charge is allowed to continue, it will be amazing to watch them attempt to answer questions about their connections with what you've heard so far. Now is time media such as, MySpace, Facebook, YouTube, Scribe, and various other free information channels can be exploited to actually reverse their otherwise useless brain hijacking effects. Once information like this begins to leak, there are others who are the siblings, spouses, workers of various individuals. They are now known to be affiliated with spiritual corruption. When they figure out that they have been used and lied to, they will begin releasing information that could never have been attained by other means, such as a master's copy of the high initiates protocols that may have been kept in private possession of a family of some long deceased master mason. As I said before, we are hacking Morpheus, and soon he will tell us everything. Their devilish doings will bring forth their ruin, just in time for the cosmic showdown, I think. And looking at the next pictures, you will see the similarities in the changes of things. Temple of Sheba, and this is Reason 137. This Temple of Sheba is actually below ground. Nubia became Lower Egypt, maintaining the pantheon of pharaohs, of course, even when it was lost to the common world. Solomon was clearly a Hebrew descendant, entreated Balkis to give him the wisdom of the stars and the doctrines of the underworld. With these instruments, what is now modern Christianity has been given form. The books of Ethiopia, the Bibles, predated all other works. All of them. The Ethiopian books became the main resource for writing many versions of the Bible in other languages. Most recent story of death and resurrection seems to be completely plagiarized from their works of another Savior and his Virgin Mother, who is black. Mary and Jesus are modeled precisely from them. And if you're on my Facebook page, sorry guys, dry throat today, you'll see how Jesus and Mary, when Jesus was a baby, the pictures changed and got lighter and lighter and lighter. Oprah Winfrey, I'm pretty sure, has been initiated. Not only did she endorse Barack Obama, which gave him the edge immediately over McCain, she also has an entertainment company called Harpo, which is her name backwards. This is also known as backward magic. Horus is the Christ-like savior in Egypt, in which Barack emulates a little bit. Horus is known as Harpocles. In Chicago, where Oprah and Obama both hail from, they have famous L, or the EL train. This train runs along the ley lines of Chicago in some type of Masonic pattern. Obviously, I'll have to expand out later where I can detail more of what's going on there. The more I talk about it, the more I see how much still needs to be said. However, something must go to the people now. I want the listener to know that even if some of this seems hazy now, just keep with it and you will see the pieces connect. I'm not telling you that anything but what has been revealed already. That being said, I'm intentionally cutting pieces short, trying to just bring us in. Several of the mind control triggers were used by the elite when they made moves to make Barack Obama president. Several movies that had made it to the box office before Barack came into the spotlight, they showed the President of the United States as an African American. Those movies were made to be favorable box office hits, and the viewer was then set onto the fertile soil for future moves. This is the way it seems like it's already happened. The actual scenario starts to take place. This makes people more comfortable in thinking that it was their idea, and many types of these methods, of course, are used. Learned from German mind control scientists, put to the test in CIA's Project MKUltra and many others. The work on compartmentalizing the brain has been phenomenally riveting. Not in a great way. Reason 138. This is how suggestive the mind works. The dream poster to trigger the feeling of Martin Luther King Jr. getting African Americans to believe they would finally be treated with justice when Barack came into office. Now, if you've been with me for a while, I had gone through some of the things that happened to the slaves just as they were being released. Of course, many of them couldn't read, but they were given pictures of the kind Lincoln and, some little fairies, and they're holding little black babies. They're still working in the fields and in the house, don't get me wrong, but they'd be so treated. They are using the exact same thing. Hundreds of years later, they're using the exact same mind control, except they're using it on people of all colors. Now, since the African Americans didn't generally vote, not believing in such nonsense as politics, this time they showed up at the polls, which caused the Republican Party, who always vote, to be outnumbered. Although they could always just cheat and rig the vote, it is better when a conscious decision is made by the people. This way, a pact or an agreement is made, because the outcome will be entirely the fault of the voters for participating in the EL action, L action. As also seen here, we've been prepped first through the media for the next African American president, who's really the incarnate of some pharaonic energy. Now, there are many out there who believe he's an actual clone, but we've talked about his ancestry. I don't think he's a clone. He's just one of those throwbacks that looks like someone. But the energy of that time, yes, I think they use that against us, because we look at the pyramids and we all somehow think they're ours and feel good about that. So, I'm just going to talk briefly on the inner core here of these societies have mastered death and resurrection. They know how to reincarnate in this world again and assume various roles of leadership. I'm showing you some pictures I think are pretty profound proof. Many people are lured into these occult circles by promises of consecutive lives, I think. I believe for some that promise was kept to their particular position on the pyramid. I doubt that those on the bottom of the pyramid enjoyed such magical or mystical prestige, but let's look at those who may be closer to the pyramid. Reason 139. Once you hear the truth, it's way stranger than fiction. When addressing the nation from the White House, Obama will stand in a pyramid, which will be on the floor of a podium traced in gold. The magic in evocation of entities. The apparition will always appear in a triangle drawn by the magician. If the magician stands in the triangle, he becomes the vessel for the apparition to communicate through. For a novice, standing inside the triangle can result in death, as the spirits that are not trained, then tamed, will tear apart the magician. The adept strikes fear in the hearts of the spirits by having in their possession certain things like daggers and swords and jewels and crooks and rings and herbs and crystals and various other magical items designed for the purposes of trapping a spirit. It's like how they use the magic squares, and these are supposed to either trap a spirit or bring them in to you, invite them, and trap them, unfortunately, in your body. Now, some of the secret organizations were known to possess the secret of bringing back one in contact with their double. This is one of the greatest values because it gave the initiate the natural powers associated with the being completely balanced and assembled or remembered. This also took place in a pyramid while lying in the sarcophagus. This also gives the initiate the ability to sing, to dance, and act to an amazing degree of perfection, since they are now using the side associated with perfect articulation and true genie. Those who are still split marvel at the accomplishments of these people and become fans, groupies, worshippers of these false idols who use their secret to the advantage. Now, if you look at the pictures I've put up of stars, I think you'll notice, same as I do, how similar they look. How they get groups of men who look the same, and women that look the same. People are almost interchangeable, and they look like that even as they grow older. Now, reason 140. In my studies into the occult, there seems to be only two explanations for this kind of doppelganger effect. Either the same spirit has possessed the same individuals that look similar to each other, as strong spirits are known to change facial appearance and sometimes bodily features of the host, or they have actually pulled their doppelgangers from some parallel and are living doubles. The twinnings, too. We've talked about this as used by mind control, making two people similar. But I think if you look at these pictures, you'll notice that it's incredible how much they look alike. And they're doing the same thing. Now, both of these scenarios, or all three, can be accomplished by a very skilled adept. In each photo, there are two different people. When King Nebuchadnezzar entered Jerusalem, he set the temple of Solomon on fire. When asked about it, he said that it was carrying out the will of Marduk. This would solve one of the biggest issues we face in deciphering who is on what side, because this shows that although both of these sects appear to worship the sun, the planets, and the serpents, it is all actually some worship serpents, and others perhaps amphibians. Still other worship the horned gods like the Ram and Ramses and Ra and Mendes, Tet, etc. The Bible says that the dragon had several heads, and they began to devour one another, till only two remained. Of course, we find tales of Solomon in much of the Hebraic lore and in the Masonic rites, in which they confess that Solomon was the first master mason. The temple itself is known as a double square. Okay, time for a break, everyone. Welcome back, everyone. Did you get some coffee? I still have tea. Sore throat today. So, here we are. We're locating ancient depictions of Solomon. And that's actually hard to do. I did come across two of the oldest ones, one by the Russians and other by Rastafarians. Believe it or not, Solomon is depicted in both the motif and the Basque relief as a half-man, half-reptilian or amphibian. Religions like Islam, Catholicism, Christianity, Judaism all support and defend Solomon as the wisest king. They all call them their own. So it is better to throw them into all one bag together here. When reading works like the Testament of Solomon, which describes his dealings with nefarious demons who are made to confess their crimes and then put in the service of building a temple, it becomes fairly obvious all who studied the Gnostic doctrines of these groups became magicians, wizards, called them Wazir or Vizier, and various other types of mystics. Once Israel subdues the complete portion of the Promised Land, it fulfills the much-awaited prophecy, which is obtaining all the land that was originally promised to them by their God of the Bible. It becomes obvious that the God of the Bible promotes the Israelites to kill in order to obtain what clearly belonged to somebody else long before they invaded. This becomes no different than what the so-called founding fathers of America did to the people who were living here first. Even the Hebrew Book of Light states that the children of Israel who wandered around in the wilderness and never made it to the Promised Land were those who found favor with the true God and thus gained an attachment to the wilderness and nature versus a city flowing with milk and honey. Milk and honey were just symbolism for the cow and the bee, the two animals sacred to the Egyptians. As we've spoken of before, we now see returning to the Promised Land was more like becoming the Egyptians for the Hebrews, based upon the way they were ruling now. There is absolutely no excuse for such barbaric behavior, unless of course you are serving a bloodthirsty deity, which brings up the point about the sacrifice here. How can it escape a person's judgment that if there is something asking you to slaughter thousands of cattle and various other animals to a huge furnace of fire, it could possibly not be something negative? Putting yourself in the moment is key here. Throwing a living cow in a furnace 10 times heated sounds horrible. Just think of thousands of them back to back, mooing to the moon like crazy. This would not smell like a drive-through Burger King, since a fur was not removed either. Some will say, yes, Jesus did away with animal sacrifice, and I will say, so we move to child sacrifice now? This God now tells his so-called only son to sacrifice himself. No parent in their right mind would participate in such a demonic activity. Thus, many in history, not in their right mind, did. This is the drawback of only using your left mind. This does not come up only once, but twice in the modern Bible, where Abraham was told to sacrifice Isaac, paying no mind to the strict rules against child sacrifice in the Bible. For the God to even use this as some sort of test is unethical, hypocritical. The behavior of an individual will ultimately determine what they are about. So through treachery and subterfuge, the world has been set awry. Once the prophecy is fulfilled of the greater Israel, it indicates it will be time for the next move, which is to rebuild the third temple of Solomon in Jerusalem, using demons again, of course. As we had heard just around Christmas, too, that they tried to move on the Dome of the Rock. The Israelis. Dome of the Rock is Muslim. It was put down, and apparently there was only a few, although we heard a great amount of protesters there, and that could have been false. But this is a sign that would have to come down for them to build in that exact spot. Once this Temple of Solomon is rebuilt, it will be done using demons, as it did before, or at least the essence of demons, because that's how it was built last time. New Jerusalem is spoken of in Revelations coming down from the sky, and that it cannot be fulfilled until the third temple is done. What remains of the last temple of Solomon in Jerusalem is only the Wailing Wall, which is why the Zionists are so fond of it. Obama was even instructed to pay a trip to it, Yamaluk and all. The proposed location of the new dome, or the temple, is the Dome of the Rock, sacred Islamic mosque. It is known that if anything happens to the Dome of the Rock, Muslims beyond number will become extremely violent and will spread real terror upon the earth, as which has never been seen. They take their religion seriously. Reason 141, the Zionists, who are now making the rules as they go, and no one is stopping them, tend to rebuild the final temple in Jerusalem. If this temple is allowed to be completed, it marks the end of the world as we know it. This is, of course, in prophecy. That has so far been correct up until now, this very moment. All that's left is to remove the Dome of the Rock. And it's very easy to make a prophecy when you're the one who constructed it and you're making these things happen. This becomes the ultimate setup for humans by these bloodthirsty deities. The Islamic prophecy reads that when the Mahdi returns, he must have his feast in the Dome of the Rock before he emancipates the Muslims. The Muslims are charged with making sure the Dome of the Rock is available at all times in case he returns. On the flip side, unless the Dome of the Rock is removed and the Temple of Solomon rebuilt, New Jerusalem cannot descend from the mount. This is, of course, the Zionists will not stand for. Neither will the Muslims. So, this equals a no-win situation. For these two brothers who have been fighting forever, and the clock is ticking down for them both. They have also dragged everyone else in the friggin' world into their battle through religion, although they refuse to give the masses the full details of what took place on Tiamat, the enemy of Marduk. So, let us look closer at the similarities of these faiths to see what has gone on so far that is beyond belief in Most High, and it's all about domination, destruction, and chaos. Keep in mind that all this is an inside job, and that people at war with each other are the sacrifice themselves. Reason 142. The Dome of the Rock. This is a most sensitive spot in the world right now. We might even be able to say the most. If it's touched, it would be like getting into a small box with thousands of queen hornets who are protecting their larvae. Many Muslims have lost focal point. Their language was one of the first codes to the Matrix, so they face a different matter than most, that most will even have to deal with personally. I will just say that when one is wise and ready to grow, they will be flexible like a reed. Thus they will bend a little for understanding. This is for growth. If one is brittle, they will break the moment something comes that blows surprise towards them. Thus, in a world full of surprises, they will not fare well, and experience it eludes them. I know this because I too can be pretty brittle. But you have to get soaked and find you can't break. Not just in booze this time, guys, but learning. The truth can be heavy for any man and woman. It must be given in stages. On this ladder, there are those coming up and there are those going down. They now use elevators, so if the guided do not rally behind one with an idea which comes before the name, then they will see a bad entity without end and may find their companions in the fire with them. I'm just an agent myself, dictating fully and faithfully what I have found in all my research. I believe if anything controls our destiny, it would not be violent. And I think there's a whole bunch of beings out there that must draw their substance, as all suspect to take their next breath, but don't see it before it goes into the body. First of the Temple of Solomon has already been reconstructed too. I will show you 2 of them, although many more exist, and they serve as portals. The wormhole, against many things, allows a person to travel anywhere on earth in an instant. Not just anyone can travel through the wormholes. The auric field of the person has to be enhanced. It is said that the elements of the wall of the wormhole dissolve anything they come in contact with that is not geometrically configured properly. This is necessary to disassemble and reassemble the atoms in perfect form. The common worshipper is told the temple, is yet to be rebuilt. I think that's a hoax. Several of them are rebuilt. One of the temples is Roslyn Chapel. The other is in Winnipeg, Manitoba, the heart connection of Canada and all of Turtle Island, North America. In sacred geometry, a double square makes 8 points, thus linking the double square to the 8-pointed star of Elu. People who've been listening to me for a while know that I went specifically to go into this temple with Tobias. That was exactly a reproduction of Solomon's temple, and I have many pictures of that. Now the Roslyn Chapel, founded by Sir William St. Clair, called Sinclair, Knight of Cockle and Golden Fleece, changed their names to Roslyn, which later became, well, first it was Rosslyn, then Roslyn, Sir Henry, and the Pentland. This is the lineage of Sir William, the first Grand Master Mason of Scotland. The chapel contains 22 Masonic marks. The rights of the Master Mason was granted to William by King James II. The two were great friends. This family became so famous and respected they were even allowed to coin money, passing 3 times around the limestone or boundary stone of Roslyn. It's known to grant whoever was allowed to do it unique abilities. The temple was always guarded to prevent anyone from doing this without the leave of the hierarchy until the chalice was removed. The temple was a great resort for gypsies. Whoever inhabited the place and the physical Holy Grail may have been stored there for some time in the chapel till it became unsafe and was removed. Reason 143. Most are uninvited to the hyperdimensional party. How I see it is the earth is near a regeneration cycle. Just like after the close of Atlantis and Lemuria, if you believe in that, when the earth lay dormant on the surface for thousands of years before it was habitable again. The elite are taking their own care of their own, of course. Thus, a few must come together to make a bridge to higher planes or get left behind. The Muslims and the Jews bear witness that Abraham was their father and all races descend from him. I pointed out earlier, this is absurd. I found stories of Abraham and Sarah to be none other than stories of Ab, meaning father, and Braham, a Brahma. Brahman and his wife Saraswati can also be found in Hindu Puranas, which is much older than the Bible and, of course, the Quran. The Brahmins were a group of beings that leaned more towards the masculine side and may have been some of the first sun worshippers, themselves being sons of the sun, which meant endowed with discovered immortality. This also means that they had completed a succession of incarnations in which they knew of their previous existence, are continuing their cycle of eternal development, or ethereal development, if you wish. Beings that are aware of this are far more advanced than those who cannot remember past lives. Just think what another 100 years of memory would do for you, or your perspective of things. What if you had 100 years of memories? Males, females, children, adults. The Bible's composition itself is a hodgepodge of several ancient books, powerful works accomplished by various individuals, heavily Sumerian, all combined in one final novel next to the Quran. Both of these books, they're pretty much the same thing. Quran is a book of repetition, repeating the same poetic words over and over in various ways about penalties for not serving Allah. It pretty much boils down to being completely obliterated by fire and demons that rip your flesh apart, then be brought back to life and obliterated again for the sake of the pain. This is to take place for eternity. Talk about scare tactics. Are there penalties for sins that are described in such ghastly detail that believers generally in fear of Allah? Both religions maintain they have delivered the final book, and all the other books do not bear witness, should not be entertained by the believer. The Quran bears witness to the Old Testament and what it calls the Injil, which is the New Testament, as being authentic works of the same God, thus whirling the two faces together even tighter. Both books claim to be storehouses of numeric and alphanumeric codes, in which only those who are trained in Kabbalah or Ajit can decipher. You can read the Bible cover to cover. If it ever gets unlocked to you, you must agree that most Christians never actually complete the Bible, let alone read it or look into it deeply enough for this. They can come very close, but they skip books like Leviticus and Numbers, even though it's called Numbers, and you should probably look there. In these books, there are pretty lengthy detail of numbers, especially in the section concerning the building of the temple. All of these numbers are actually the codes that can be deciphered to bring forth immense amounts of Gnostic information. All of the letters in Hebrew double as numbers, so the numbers actually spell words. These words were various names of energies related to controlling whatever is being discussed in that particular scripture in some symbolic way. For example, if it was 13 bushels of wheat, whatever that translated to in Hebrew was the god or the goddess of wheat, let's say is. Furthermore, it should not escape the reader's attention that the priests of the time had to be from the tribe of Levi. Levi is an anagram for evil, which makes even more sense when you consider the role of the Leviathan, which seems to be playing a pretty heavy role in controlling our minds, especially during sleep. Leviathan can also be looked at as the Cthulhu. This name, Levi, given to the priests, called in Hebrew Kohen, another anagram for Enoch. It can't get any more obvious, but the yogis say people are sleepwalking in an illusion. Spanish word noche, which is night, is another anagram for Enoch, us walking into the night, holding hands, skipping along. Reason 144. There are in fact several arks constructed for the purpose of keeping sacred items to some deity. There was the Ark of the Covenant, there was an Ark of Ra, Ark of Mary, and numerous others. The word ark means bow or vessel, such as Noah's Ark. Thus the original arks were used as crafts. Contact could also be accomplished by these various devices through transport, hologram, or wormhole. Just as we upgrade constantly, these beings are upgrading as well. So imagine the difference in Kasana and a, stealth bomber. The dispute between these two nations remains partly due to the issue of the birthright that was stolen from Ishmael, although he was the eldest son. It goes on that Abraham built the first altar with the assistance of his eldest son, Ishmael, who later became the father of the 12 tribes of the Arabs, Ad, Samud, Chedis, Teism, etc. This altar was known as the Kaaba of Mecca. The altar. The Quran, Solomon, talks to the birds, commands the same jinn, and one specifically named Ifrit, to go and steal the throne of Queen Makadiah of Ethiopia, who is said to be worshipping the sun. So again, we've got the Ethiopian queen here. Solomon's gift for communicating with birds can be compared to the highly mysterious language of the birds, which is known to be given to those who reached higher spiritual levels and thus received instructions from angels. Certain books I've watched magician after magician stumble over the language or origin of this language, most saying it was bequeathed by angels. This language is really the language of the bards, more commonly known in the highest circles as Skald Skapar Mal. This is said to be the language spoken before the confusion at the Tower of Babel. The knowledge of this language requests the possessor the ability to communicate with all animals. The original bards were supposed to be half man, half bird, like you see if you go back to Reason 131. Now, and that was part 9. Now, because they had wings, they became easily associated with angels, but are the fallen ones, the beginning and the end of our troubles. Reading Islam, you notice certain inconsistencies right away, so don't say I'm just picking on one religion, I'm picking on them all. The main one being a story concerning the intelligence level of the Prophet Muhammad. It is said that Muhammad could neither read nor write. This puts special emphasis on the miracle, the Quran, purported to be given to him by the angel Gabriel. After all, it lends more credibility if a man can neither read nor write, and all of a sudden, with the greatest spiritual works of time, rich in poetic meaning and spiritual dialogue. Now, what is not said here? The stories, which have to be authenticated, of course they didn't want the same Jesus problem to happen, all say that when he saw the angel Gabriel, one of two things happened. Of course, he's in the cave by himself. He goes and gets his wife and brings her up there. She 100% could write. I think that he didn't write this at all. I think his wife wrote it, because as we will find out later in several of these stories, even kind of alludes to it in both Solomon tales, that they don't want to talk to the man. They want to talk to the woman, these beings, these angels. So some of the stories said she wrote it. I think he left the cave, this spiritual man, supposedly, because the angel Gabriel did not want to talk to him. So moving on. The original book was said to be numerically equivalent to the number 19 and was never translated into vulgar languages. This book remains protected by the Sudanese till this day. No one's seen it, but they say it exists. Many anomalies exist within the book itself. Like all the chapters, when added up, produce a number divisible by 19. How many times Allah is mentioned in the whole Quran? That number is divisible by 19. The first chapter, Al-Fatiha, when said correctly, causes the tongue to touch the roof of the mouth 19 times. It exceeds a person's normal capacity after a while to keep the consistency of the 19s going. Even our modern computers could not do it, since the story is also unfolding while the perfect numbers roll in place. This became the sign of the Muslims, that Muhammad was guided and in contact with the great deity Allah through his host, the angel Gabriel. The angel Gabriel is known to be the moon Gabriel. It seems that where most of the scholars and spiritual leaders of today get lost is thinking that these religions are so separate. Also in question here is the mandatory ceremony of Akiyah, established by Muhammad himself, which consists of a sacrifice to Allah in the name of a child, 2 he-goats for a boy, 1 he-goat for a girl. This incantation must be done during the blood sacrifice and feast. I read it. O Allah, I offer to these instead of my own offspring, life for life, blood for blood, head for head, bone for bone, hair for hair, and skin for skin. In the name of the great Allah, I do sacrifice this goat. What? Why does it appear that Allah would even want a child to be sacrificed? And something must expiate that? This is something that continues to reoccur in history of men involved with these gods, and no religion is outside of this. If you think my religion doesn't do that, then read your books. All of this belief shows the reasoning of mankind is absolutely insane, or at least deluded. Even people who are said to be devout in purity. There is a God who thinks sacrificing our children to him, then we have a war on our hands here. I'm saying that this after millions of children have already been sacrificed and thousands upon thousands continue to disappear. Who will face this foe? Bomar has fastened his armor, and who will join him? In Islam, it says Muhammad married Kahada, who is a rich businesswoman who chose Muhammad to run all of her business dealings because he was a whiz with numbers. This woman was the one that Muhammad went to get when Gabriel showed up. But this, too, begins to shake the foundations of Muhammad being illiterate, seeing that if he knew how to add and subtract, he also knew how to read and write. Remember, Arabic also has same letters for numbers. There was no doubt 2 Muhammads actually existed at the same time. One teaching pure monotheism. The other was an invention of a man called Musalamit, close, a political leader who saw the charisma of the real Muhammad and attempted to entice him to be a political leader. Muhammad, they said, would have none of it. So this man became a sworn enemy, ultimately succeeding in getting Muhammad poisoned. Or was it the other Muhammad? Do you think they could poison the guided? You might say, well, they hung Jesus because it was the will of God. Really? Who is this being? Did they not say we could drink the poison of vipers and it hath no effect? Are we not the body? It is only the vehicle to traverse this dimension, and it is sluggish and moveth about like a square wheel going uphill. The Kaaba itself, in history, was used various times for idol worship, although it is said Muhammad came to do away from these things. We are told, now this is legends of the area, that it's on the space, it's on the place that Adam built the very first temple. And before that, it was a place that the jinn built their temples, so they were supposed to be on this land before us. The jinn could be aliens, they could be angels, they could be spirits. It's just another one of those stories. There's something, or they wouldn't be mentioned. Let's move on. So, Kaaba itself has been destroyed several times by fires and natural causes too through history. On these occasions, it's always men from Egypt of high nobility who paid to rebuild it. The connection between Egypt and the Kaaba is very heavy. It is better known as the shrine. It has been an object of veneration for hundreds, if not thousands and thousands of years. Law exists, such as if you walk around it 70 times, all your sins are forgiven. If you pray in a special section, you get a better position in paradise. As children, these stories can be fascinating, but as adults, we should know better. No amount of walking around a cube will expiate you from wrongdoings. Life itself is the biggest example of that. Things are taken at times from the Kaaba and sold, like the water of the well Zamzam and the dust from the covering. Leave it at that. People are buying it. Reason 145. A great deal of illumination came from the Arabs and their affiliations with the genies and the jinn, also called also in Hindu the Jan, meaning it can mean devils, or the Dajjal. It means a couple things. Later the name is definitely changed to demon, but they may not be that. And in most of the old religions it says that some are good, some are bad. They're like us, they can choose. So they're probably just as bad as us and just as good. Now the religions of the world all connect, and it is only the blinded that hold fast to their faith while walking about, talking about another. True picture is internal. Pictured on my page, and it's really beautiful, is the Ilah al-Ilahu. Oh wait, Ilah al-Ilahu. I think I got that. Sorry if I didn't. The Muslims are forbidden to carve the images of God for purposes of secrecy and sanctity. No pictures of Muhammad either. It's why their artwork and the writing is so beautiful. But they use the designs and their rich language to express what they viewed. Notice the swastika on the medallion. We see the same thing with Real. Are you beginning to see that the inner circle is not separate as they claim? It is the people who are divided, defending the gods as if they need the protection of a man, offering to them as if they need to eat food, spend money. Reason 146. There is no doubt that the Kaaba itself is on a major ley line here. Islam contains so many sects, from Sunni, Shiite, Sufi, Wahhab, etc. Its inner circle of mysticism remains unable to be included in the general religion itself. The Sufi, by the way, you can be any religion, be one. By this I mean the Arab words abound with sorcery and such practices. However, it is easy to pin that on the individual, not the believer, since the Quran forbids such things. I believe one of the 4 gates of the world is contained here. The belief in one God is also found in this faith. However, I question if the one God has a 5-letter name before it is tossed about before acts of vengeance. Likewise, the sacrifices and senseless and should be treated as such, as all are, in my mind anyway. And of course, there can be wonderful things about all things, wonderful parts about all religions. But being a woman, I have to say, anything patriarchal at all, I'm a little leery. Now, on the most sacred parts of the Kaaba is a stone jewel placed in the corner. and I do have a picture of that. In another more detailed account of jewels, they fell from the sky. We also hear they fell from Lucifer in legend. It was supposed to be part of his crown. I've heard that. But anyway, Lucifer in legend was struck by a great angel so hard it knocked the jewels out of his crown and they fell to earth. To those who recovered them, they gained magical powers. Doesn't it sound more like a campfire tale? However, there are 12 synergy crystals that are said to enhance human ability. They are moldavite, danbarite, tanzanite, azulitite, phenacite, herberite, Tibetan tactite, and they go on. And even these names sound a little bit, hey, who are these people? But most of these stones are meteorites that have fallen from space through time. Whether they came out of the crowns of angels, or specifically Lucifer, could be metaphoric, of course. They fell from the sky. Maybe it was a dark night. Maybe there was a storm. That's why we'd look at it evil. But they are made of foreign elements, hardened into glass when entering our atmosphere. Catholicism, there are 4 great angels: Michael, Gabriel, Raphael, and Uriel, of whom the latter is sometimes swapped for other angels, but at least the other 3 stay pretty much the same. If you go to a Baptist church, they assure you they have nothing in common with Catholicism, yet the main prayers are taking place. The names of angels are sometimes mentioned, and they are, of course, the same. Islam, same thing happens. And even in New Age movement, when often receives emails from someone who has channeled the Archangel Michael, who sends light into the grid as to make our transcendence into the beyond, and all that mumbo jumbo. Yeah, da. And if you send me $29.95, I too can heal you. So what does this tell you? Pretty obvious that if the main workers for the religion have maintained the same, then all the religions are linked to one same source. Even deeper, you will find that the name Michael means one who's like God. If I remember correctly, there's only one who pretended he was like the Most High, and he was hurled from space, most of the stories, or into a pit. Some may believe this is a stretch to advocate that Michael is a fallen angel. However, let us again look at the term angel and where it comes from. Reason 147. This is well-known painting of Angel Gabriel and Muhammad that has survived since antiquity. It's a pretty cool one, I think. It strikes me as odd that Gabriel has black wings, which signifies fallen angel. In addition to this, there are several texts. Many men who went to the east to become mystics say that Baphomet and Muhammad are the same beings, and they are worshipped in mystic Islam. A Muslim would say such statements are sacrilegious. However, Baphomet has black wings. It seems that all the religions are tied to the horned gods some way or another, the age of the ram. And first off, it should be mentioned that in Hebrew doctrines they classified their angelic beings as Erelim, Chesmalim, Aphanim, Ophanim, Macalchim, Chilath, Hexaroth, Hexadesh, etc. This means they do not group other spiritual forces together and just call them all angels. In fact, that term is foreign to them. This is because in encountering these beings through evocation, the magicians and Kabbalists learned that many of them are very different from others, so they categorize them as such. And again, the term angel comes from the word angle. It appears only fallen angels respond when evoked. Other writings, it says many tribes wandered after they called the Chaldean Baalim, or Baalim, although it has not been determined that all the IMs mentioned, that I just mentioned, can be grouped under that one title. I guess maybe it's possible. In other cultures, angels are given names such as Sakalem, Emesha, Spentas. The main concern is that actual uses for these beings here. It describes that some reveal treasure, some make women fall in love with you, some give you amnesty. I would highly consider, again, why would a high vibrational being want to grant a human undeserved favors just because they knew how to do a ritual? There is, of course, much more at stake when entering into the leagues with types of spirits, and most have unleashed a never-ending karmic seesaw for tampering with spiritual forces for selfish means. Reason 148. Since their plans have reached completion, they are now prepared to tell the world bluntly about their involvement with angels, demons, Baalim, Grigori, Nephilim, Raphaelim, and, God knows what else. We can assume that there are always things that will not be talked about until they happen, and just as it's never good to tell anyone your desires before they happen. Be watchful of these watchers. Some things I have put direct emphasis on and may have been a little bit repetitive. I've done this with a purpose, so as it will stick with you. Spirituality and science, as a couple, have first birthed monsters such as Cain was the first son of Adam and Eve. It is these monsters that have become very strong thought forms, moving about on their own will, totally uncontrollable by those who originally brought them forth. We have been given the task of removing them. Intel is now released. It is the Nephilim computer chip. And I am going to leave you with that today. So if anyone's keeping track, we will start on Reason 149 next week. I know we have a couple minutes left if you'd like to call in and ask a question. If not, I would like, Dave, do you want to play us some music?
I can do that.
Thank you very much, babe.
Tremendous series, sweetie.
Thank you very much. I think we have one part left.